We're back to Washington's new normal. For the second time around, Trump promised shock and awe, and here we are. Sweeping actions and reversals on Biden-era policies. Immigration reform is also front and center, but many of his actions are set to be tested. Joining me now to discuss is the Hill's Jesse Byrnes. So Jesse, Trump has authorized ICE arrests in places like schools and churches, which we typically didn't really see before, right? After all of these executive orders on immigration policy. And Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, basically told Democrats it's game on. So can you walk us through these changes that we can expect in the coming days and weeks, and also how Democratic cities and states might try to resist them?
Sure, and this is no surprise for anyone who's been paying attention to what Trump and Homan have been saying for months. They've been signaling they were going to go hard on immigration starting on day one. We haven't seen the raids quite yet, but the act of actually going into churches, into schools, these sensitive areas, the Obama years in 2011 is when the ICE passed a policy to essentially avoid these areas that were viewed as sensitive. Now, one thing to keep an eye on here is once images start to come out, footage of ICE actually going to these places, if in fact they do, those images will be interesting. They'll be captivating, and we'll see if the administration shifts its tone a little bit based on public opinion. Trump is very much tuned into the optics of what's happening on television, and if we do see ICE raids happening in places like churches and schools, that will certainly become part of the conversation.
Yeah, that's a good point. It will be interesting to see how people respond to that. And immigration right now is sort of the topic du jour, and yesterday was mentioned during the inaugural prayer service. The Episcopalian Bishop of Washington asked the president specifically to have mercy on immigrants. Take a listen to what she said.
I ask you to have mercy, Mr. President, on those in our communities whose children fear that their parents will be taken away, and that you help those who are fleeing war zones and persecution in their own lands to find compassion and welcome here.
So she's speaking directly to him there. How is he responding to that?
Yeah, and the Reverend has come out and said that she wasn't trying to call him out, although very clearly was calling him out.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious.
And that was lost on no one, especially the president and the vice president, who were sitting there and watching this play out. Trump demanding an apology, saying that her speech was a disgrace and that she did not have a lot of grace in her pitch to him there. But clearly, Trump is in a very adversarial position when it comes to critics on specifically immigration. She mentioned a number of things there, but immigrants and the administration's approach to immigrants has long been very controversial, going back to 2015 when Trump first ran for office. And so it's no surprise that he is taking a hard line on this topic. But it also comes now, as we're talking about, going into churches, going into schools to conduct immigration raids. And so it'll be interesting to see if this kind of plays into that focus as well. And also the fact that Trump's really not backing down on his campaign promises here.
Mm-hmm. Well, in addition to those ICE arrests that we were just talking about, it's also being reported that refugee flights to the U.S. have been canceled after some of these Trump orders. So, do we know anything more about which refugees, how many? What more do we know about this?
Yeah, a lot of those details are still coming into focus, but we do know that there is certain communications being sent out from the State Department leadership, the new administration, signaling that refugees, their travel plans are being canceled. This is a little bit of a surprise because in the executive order that Trump signed earlier in the week, there was a January 27th deadline for this to actually be enacted. Obviously, we're a few days ahead of that. And so, refugee resettlement, accepting refugees, that was something the first Trump term, they really scaled back from the Obama years. Biden then opened up that again. And so now scaling it back. But also, the chaos kind of surrounding this, it can become very chaotic very quickly. We saw that with the travel ban in the first Trump administration. A week into his first term, when they passed this sweeping measure, we had images of people stuck at airports, unable to get into customs, and that was a visual that is very much in recent memory for a lot of people. And so I think this is kind of reminiscent of that, but we'll see how this plays out in the coming hours.
Right, the optics and also just the sort of gray area that feels like they're approaching. So if you take a look at Trump day one by the numbers, a lot has happened in just the past couple days. Certainly the sort of shock and awe play by the president. Can you give us a sort of breakdown of what we're looking at in terms of executive orders, executive actions, and specifically how he targeted the Biden administration policies?
Well, big picture, he withdrew 78 of Biden's executive actions so far. That's just on his first day in office. He pardoned the around 1,500 defendants from the Capitol riot. He had 26 executive orders that he signed himself, which shattered the record that Biden had already set during his administration. It also included a number of personnel announcements, memos, proclamations, covering a variety of topics, immigration, all the way down through the litany of his campaign promises. So he really has hit the ground running from day one. He promised at one point on the campaign trail that he would be a dictator for a day when it came to executive orders. He planned to sign many of them. He did sign many of them. And we're still learning the ramifications for all of these orders and how it's going to impact really millions of people across the country.
Right, and certainly not just immigration, right? One thing Trump promised to go after was DEI, and
That's right.
Federal DEI employees will be placed on paid leave today. There was a memo sent out to federal agencies being asked to submit a written plan by January 31st for dismissing these DEI employees. So do we know which specific types of DEI programs were shut down and how many people will ultimately be affected by this?
And we don't. And the way that this was actually implemented, they are being very intentional, this incoming Trump team, of trying to suss out how many people could actually be impacted by this. One of the first directives in this memo is asking different agencies across the federal government to identify offices and individuals working on DEI initiatives, even if their title has nothing to do with DEI. And so this incoming Trump team is trying to really suss out what are the initiatives that are even connected to diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, and how can they roll those back? And we'll see action here in the coming weeks, trying to roll back much of what the Biden administration did on this topic specifically, but also going back even farther than that.
Yeah, and it will be interesting to see if they end up targeting more people than you would expect, just judging by job title.
Yeah, and really the Office of Management and Budget within the White House is going to be in the driver's seat for a lot of this. It is executive policy, and so they don't have to go. They do have to operate obviously within the law when it comes to laying off people. That's why they're putting people on leave right away. They're not just firing people.
Right.
But there is a lot of unilateral action that can be taken by Trump and his team, and they're doing that right out of the gate.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds. But I do want to switch gears to Congress really quickly. Top congressional Republicans met with Trump yesterday. Let's take a listen to what Speaker Mike Johnson had to say.
There's a lot of anxious anticipation, a lot of excitement about what we're going to do, and the House Republicans are ready to deliver. What came out of the meetings of the White House yesterday was that we're going to do this in a bicameral manner. You're going to have the Senate Republicans and the House Republicans working together to advance the America First agenda, and we will deliver.
So really quickly, it sounds like they still haven't made progress based off of that one soundbite.
No, and I think that he kind of hit the nail on the head with this anxious excitement going on. Mm-hmm. House Republicans and Senate Republicans, they need to move quickly. They need to make up their mind on how they're going to approach implementing Trump's agenda. We saw in the first Trump administration, they got tied up with infrastructure, they got tied up with the tax cuts bill that really consumed a lot of the oxygen in Washington here for the entire first year of Trump's presidency. They got it done at the end of the day. But what they're talking about now is a much bigger lift. They're talking about immigration, they're talking about energy, they're talking about tax cuts extension, they're talking about raising the debt limit. All of these are individually huge lifts, and they're trying to combine them together. And so Republicans and the White House have to come to agreement quickly on what is the strategy. What are they going to prioritize? Are they going to try to do it all at once? Or are they going to try to split this up? Trump obviously wants some early wins. He's going to get the Lake and Riley bill initially to sign in the Senate, and some good news there for him and his agenda on immigration. But these big picture campaign promises on legislation, they have to decide quickly what they want to do.
Yeah, feels like a different world. The Hill's Jesse Byrnes, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
The Trump administration is not wasting any time rolling out its immigration agenda, with the first buses of deportees already crossing the border. News Nation's Jorge Ventura joins us now from Hidalgo, Texas. Jorge, how significant is this operation, and what are you seeing on the ground?
I'm here at the McAllen Hidalgo International Bridge, and right behind us sits across Reynosa, Mexico. And on Tuesday, we started to see the first buses of deported Mexican nationals in the early stages of what President Trump calls the largest deportation operation in U.S. history. Now, take a look at this new video here. News Nation cameras captured buses of Mexican nationals deported back to Reynosa, Mexico. Even more deportations are expected to ramp up in the coming weeks. These are among the first Mexican nationals to be deported under the Trump administration. After being processed by Mexican authorities, deportees will board other buses again and head to Mexico City with several stops along the way. An exclusive interview with News Nation, Mexican immigration officials from the border state of Tamaulipas revealed their plans to handle the influx of deportees. 3 new shelters are set to open soon in Reynosa, Matamoros, and Nuevo Laredo, Mexico. Each facility can hold up to 2,500 deportees and will provide temporary lodging, food, and medical checkups. However, these shelters will only accept Mexican nationals deported to Mexico, not foreign nationals. According to Mexican officials, Mexican national deportees will receive 2,000 pesos, which is around $100 to assist with travel expenses back to their hometowns. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum is calling it the Mexico Embraces You program as officials continue preparing to receive deportees.
Somehow, almost everyone brings money for their journey, but they are also being supported with a discount from the federal government so they can purchase another bus ticket at a given amount at a discounted rate. Those buses are provided for free by the National Institute of Migration.
The Mexican government says they are sending around 180 buses to Mexican border towns to transport deportees to the interior of the country. This also comes as the Trump administration has reinstated the Remain in Mexico policy, a measure that was launched first back in 2019. This policy does require asylum seekers attempting to enter the U.S. through Mexico to remain in Mexico while their court cases are heard. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum and her cabinet members have expressed strong disagreement with the policy. Critics argue that the policy forces migrants to live in dangerous border towns where many have been victims of abuse and extortion by cartels. Sheinbaum also called on the Trump administration to not shut down the CBP One app, which had allowed migrants to schedule asylum appointments at legal ports of entry. However, the app was shut down on Trump's first day back in office, further complicating the asylum process for migrants. Now, while Mexican officials say they do disagree with Trump's latest initiatives on the southern border, they say they are ready to receive non-Mexican deportees. Back to you.
News Nation's Jorge Ventura, thank you so much. More than 100 looters and burglars have been arrested over the past 2 weeks for hitting empty houses near the LA wildfires. Criminals ransacked evacuated neighborhoods, making off with high-end goods and valuables. Authorities say 3 burglars took over an estimated 6 figures worth of stolen property. Another man donned firefighter gear to hit a home in Malibu. California Governor Gavin Newsom says he's upgrading looting to a felony after being pressured by LA County DA Nathan Hochman and federal prosecutors. Most arrests were made for curfew violations and trespassing, according to authorities. That's today's Daily Debrief. I'm Bianca Facchinei. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to The Hill's YouTube channel. And come back here soon for the intersection between politics and policy.